You can say no and get out of it. That's not you. That's an action that you took. Should you really be pushing towards video games? Isn't that a whole nother addiction? Can't that be a negative thing? Your brain tries to tell you and keep you safe because that's all it's designed to do. It's okay to suck. It's okay. It's fine. We all start somewhere. What's done is done and nothing can change that. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck forever.
All right, so let me jump right in. Something I've always wondered about that first stretch, like those first 24 to 72 hours, isn't that actually the hardest part? Because on day 0, people are usually coming off a binge. Maybe they're full of shame, they're sleep deprived, they feel like trash. And then the cravings can hit hard right away. So here's my devil's advocate thought. Why not just white-knuckle it? Like, grit your teeth, push through, distract yourself until the urges pass. Isn't willpower enough for those first couple days?
Well, I'll tell you right now, white-knuckling it doesn't usually work simply because your brain knows that that's not a sustainable thing for you. You know that you can't just keep white-knuckling it, and sometimes your brain will make you feel like the urges will last forever, when in reality they won't. I think it's important to remind yourself that typically if you don't feed them, your urges will only last a few minutes. And it's important to keep that in mind while recovering. I also think that, it's important to in the first 24 hours, it might not be as difficult simply because your hormones have kind of subsided and they've kind of leveled out a bit. But after that, first 3 days, I would say, are probably the most difficult. And I think that, I know that the chaser effect is playing a huge part in that. Basically, your mind gets this huge rush of dopamine. And then right after that, your mind, when you level out and whatnot, you then are at a lower threshold of dopamine in your system, and you crave that high amount of dopamine that you just had. And that's basically the chaser effect, and that continues first few days up to a week or two after relapse. So it's important to remember that too, that it's not going to be that difficult forever, that first of all, it's not going to be that difficult the entire day. Some days you might have that, but typically it won't be, especially if you don't give it any ground to take from you. If you stand your ground and don't give it any, it won't have any fuel to continue. And when I'm saying it, I'm talking about the temptation or any of the urges. It won't have any of that to use against you, because if you fuel it a little bit, if you give it an inch, it'll take a mile from you. Any little bit of fuel you give it will snowball. And it's important to remember that in those moments of the first few days especially, this feels like it's going to last forever, because that's what your mind will tell you, even if not verbally, even if not in not so many words. It'll be an abstract feeling of, oh, geez, I really want this. I really, that's what you'll feel. It's important to remember that it won't last forever. This too shall pass. And that it's going to, even day after day, again, remembering that the first 2 weeks are the most difficult. If you can make it past the first 2 weeks without giving it fuel, without giving it anything, it's going to start getting easier from there.
That makes a lot of sense. I like how you broke down the chaser effect. It kind of explains why people spiral so fast after a slip, because their brain's literally chasing that huge dopamine spike. But here's me pushing back a little. If someone's in that state, where their brain is screaming, just one more time, and they're convinced the urge won't end, how do they actually believe themselves when they say, this will pass? Like, logically they might know it won't last forever, but in the moment it feels endless. What's the trick for getting that truth from just a concept in your head to something you actually feel and trust when you're in the storm?
That's a good question. I think that what you want to do is be able to separate yourself from the temptation. You don't just want to sit in it and have it continue to scream. You want to, if you can, you want to distance yourself from it. Use that energy that you're feeling in that moment. Use that immense feeling of, okay, this is something I want, something, that kind of, it's almost depending on your state of mind. It's either a clashing feeling or it's a go get that feeling. And using that as energy, you can transmute it you can use it as a spark and transmute it. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can do that. What I just said, you can use it as a spark, and you can use that spark to get away from it, to physically move yourself to a different environment, because environments trigger the same kind of the same kind of responses in your brain. If you're in a certain environment, if you're in your relapse environment, you're going to relapse more likely. So if you get yourself away from that and keep yourself grounded, go do something that's either an alternative or go do something that is completely just different or something. Here's what else you can do is you can use that to change your physiology, basically shock your body in some way. Either, not necessarily has to be a big shock, but something that changes your body's, where it doesn't care about that anymore, your body's internal compass, where you can work out, you can take a cold shower, you can just get out in nature and calm down. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. I think that's integral to recovery, because if you don't, you're going to sit in it and you're going to simmer in it, and that simmering is going to build up until it boils, and that boiling is going to push you towards relapse more and more and more, and it really becomes where you're sitting in a crock pot that's slowly heating and heating and heating more and more and more, which everybody's going to at some point get out. They're going to cave to the pressure. So if you remove yourself from that crock pot and you get yourself into a different environment, even if temporarily. Now, it can be argued that yes, when you come back to that environment at some point, as you're most likely going to need to, it does make it more difficult because you're putting yourself back in that environment, and then you're like, oh, well, relapse zone again. But I feel like you stand a far better chance if you get away. Now, obviously, you can't always be removing yourself from the environment. Obviously, that would be impractical because depending on where it is, it's because if you do, you'll always be moving and you'll never be sitting still and doing something. So that's where the other part comes in, where you can transmute it. What you can do is take that energy and transmute it into something that either is a flow state or a creative endeavor. And by doing that, by sitting and accepting the discomfort and using that discomfort, because you'll feel it course through your body. You'll feel this uneasiness where you get the tinglies, and they're not good. They're not good tinglies. They're negative, bad tinglies. They don't feel good. But you use that and you say, no, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do this creative thing instead. Now, if you're just slothing around, you're on TikTok, you're on YouTube, you're playing, well, I don't want to say playing video games. Playing video games can be a good distraction from that too. Not that you should always distract yourself, but that's getting into a whole different rabbit hole. But you can use the energy that you feel towards a pursuit, and by doing that, and sometimes that's just riding out the wave. Sometimes you got to do that. That's another thing, that other than moving, what you can do is sit and ride out the wave for a little bit before you move. So you ride out the wave, ride out the wave, ride out the wave. Then you're like, it just keeps hitting me. And you get to a point where it gets higher and higher and higher, the urge each time. This can happen, is what I'm saying. And after a certain amount, it's like, oh, okay, well, this is really difficult now. Then you can get away. Or you can get away when it's still down here. Either way. But like I said, oftentimes it's not practical to always move away.
Yeah, I like the way you framed it. Almost like the urge itself is raw energy, and instead of letting it simmer until it explodes, you've got to redirect it into something else, either by changing your state physically or creatively. That crock pot image you used is so on point. But let me throw in a challenge here. A lot of people hear cold shower, workout, go outside, and they're like, man, I don't have the willpower for that in the moment. When I'm in the storm, the last thing I want to do is lace up my shoes and go for a run. So, what would you say to someone who feels almost paralyzed in that moment? Like they know the healthy escape route, but they're frozen and default back to the old habit. How do you break through that paralysis?
So I think there's definitely two parts of this. There's the yin and yang of everything. And I think in this case, it depends on your state of mind, which was what makes it so nuanced, what makes it so difficult, because there's so many different things that you can do. And there's so many different states of mind that you can be in and so many variables, which is what makes it so difficult. It's not just a straightforward path for everybody. What you can do instead is have a compelling alternative. So depending on how you feel, if you're feeling it and you get angry at it and you just feel like you want to exert this energy or change your physiology of some way, say, get out of my system, basically, then you can go and do those physiological things. You can say no and get out of it. Or what you can do is if you have a compelling alternative. So it's a lot easier to go, okay, so I'm feeling this kind of way. But if you have an alternative, then what you can do is go, okay, we have this alternative. And so what I'm saying by alternative is having something else, another activity that is enjoyable to do and something that you can just compromise and convince your primal mind to settle for, rather than saying, oh, okay, I really want this, and trying to convince yourself to do something even more difficult that you don't want to do. Those difficult things are helpful when you do want to do something difficult, if that makes sense, because we all want challenges in our life. We all want things. We all sometimes just want to use that anger and get away from something. But we also sometimes are feeling lazy and we don't want to do those things. And willpower is a different story. Willpower, it depends. Willpower is up and down. I don't really believe in willpower, not in the sense of, oh, willpower doesn't exist or whatever. I don't think it's a good thing to conceptualize, because it just doesn't help anybody. And like, oh, I ran out of willpower. Like, it doesn't, as a concept, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to be useful. I understand it as a concept, obviously, but it doesn't make sense. It's not useful to anybody. And we want to do what is useful rather than what is logically makes sense, because if we follow what is useful, we get things done. We do things and we succeed. So the alternatives going back to that, what you can do instead is having an alternative such as video games, or having, watching a movie, going and starting a chat with a friend, anything that you can convince yourself that isn't relapse. And sometimes, the argument can be made that, oh, well, should you really be pushing towards video games? Isn't that a whole nother addiction? Can't that be a negative thing? I'm not saying to waste your whole day on video games. What I'm saying is take 30 minutes out of your day when after after saying no and riding the wave and holding strong and continuing to channel your inner energy towards a pursuit. And then the third time, it's like, shit, okay, I need to get out. I'm done. My body is too irritated for this. It's like if you're in a hot sauna for 3 hours, you're going to want to get out of that. You're not going to want to stay in that. It's going to be a pressure building from within. So what you can do is, instead of using that as energy, because, okay, say you get pissed off. Let's use the sauna example. Say you get pissed off at 10 minutes into the sauna and you start, we're not even talking about health considerations here. This is a metaphor. This is not an actual scenario. But say you get pissed off at the sauna. Say it's in the middle of the desert. Say you're in the middle of the desert. It's 110 degrees outside and you get pissed off and you start doing push-ups because you're so pissed off that you're dropped in the middle of nowhere and you're pissed, okay? Now, what you can do is you can either sulk there and die, or you can use that energy and do the push-ups. Not that that's necessarily the best thing to do in the middle of a desert, but this is a metaphor, like I said. Or what you can do is you want to get out. It's not a very good metaphor, I'll be honest. But you want to get out of that desert. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is that that heat is going to be, it's going to be pressing on you. It's going to be pressure. It's going to be internal resistance that you don't like because you don't like the feeling of being too overheated. You can use that to get out of the desert. So you keep walking towards somewhere else. And if you can remove yourself from that situation and do something more enjoyable, because that's easy to convince yourself to do at that point. You're like, oh, I've been working on this for this long. I'm done. I am at my limit, and it's okay to be at your limit. Okay. Now, people in the self-improvement community will say, don't have limits, push through everything. And that's good advice, because there's always another limit in your brain. No, that's not what I meant to say. You can always push through the barrier in your brain. Your brain stops far before your actual body needs to. Your brain tries to tell you and keep you safe, and because that's all it's designed to do. And you can always push through another barrier. So no matter how good you get at that. However, what I'm saying though is that in this case, it's okay to not have that built up. It's okay to not have that mental fortitude at first, because that's just the reality. People say that discipline is a muscle, and that's absolutely true. And discipline needs to be built up just like a muscle. And so it's okay to go to the gym and say, I've been here for 15 minutes and I've really worked out and I'm at my limit. I can't breathe. If you're just starting out, for example, your lungs are struggling to keep up. It's okay to suck. It's okay. It's fine. We all start somewhere. We're all, it needs to be built up, just like going to the gym. It's okay to use lighter weights. It's okay to start somewhere and slowly build yourself up. And that's what I think a lot of people misunderstand, is that it's not going to be just, oh, okay, now I can lift up these super heavy weights and I'm going to be able to do everything. It doesn't work like that. You got to start somewhere, and then you build up that resistance. So what I'm trying to get at is, essentially, you want to be able to recognize when you are at your limit, and that's okay. You don't need to feel against yourself because that. You got to be synonymous. You got to work with yourself. You got to have that synergy with yourself, because otherwise you're fighting against yourself. And the one person that you don't want to fight against you is you, because who else is going to do it? Who else is going to take care of your life? Nobody else but you. So you got to be the person to do that. And you got to make friends with yourself. And what that means is not pointing the finger and saying, not calling yourself names, not putting yourself down, but realizing, okay, I'm at my limit. And you got to actually question whether it's your limit. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it is. And when you see yourself going towards these patterns that you don't like, when that actually starts to occur, you can catch yourself in your brain before you actually start to take the actions. Or maybe you just start at the very tip of the actions. You start that and you're like, oh shit, I'm actually considering this as an actual plausible thing. I need to get out. I need to go do something else. I need to go do my alternative action. And that is exactly how you get out of that.
Man, I really like where you went with that, especially the part about compelling alternatives. That feels huge, because you're right. If someone's already drained, telling them, go do push-ups, might not stick. But if they've already lined up something enjoyable, like a game, a movie, or calling a friend, it's way easier to trick the brain into buying that trade-off in the heat of the moment. Let me challenge you on one piece, though. You said discipline is like a muscle and it's okay to be at your limit early on. Totally get that, but don't you think some people might take that as permission to stay weak forever? Like, oh, I just don't have the discipline muscle, so I'll always cave. How do you keep the idea of being compassionate with yourself from slipping into just making excuses?
So yeah, that's not what I said. I never said that you can stay weak forever. It's quite the opposite. You should be working on yourself. You should be building that muscle. But it's okay to be at the beginning of the game. It's okay to be in the early stages of that. Even if you've been at it for a while, you are where you are, and that's okay. Okay. Not that it makes your previous actions okay necessarily. Not that that's justifying them, but it's letting go of that and accepting where you are in the present. What's done is done and nothing can change that. And as sucky as that is, as horrible as it depends on, okay, as annoying as that might be, that is in the past, that is concrete, and you can't change that. And that might piss you off. And be pissed off, or let it go, take inventory of where you are now, and make sure that doesn't keep happening forever. It's okay to suck now. It's okay to be in that zone of, okay, I suck now, and even relapsing some more times, that's going to happen. It's part of the journey. That's not the desired outcome. We need to strive to stay away from that. And that's the only way to build discipline. That's the only way to keep growing. You learn from each relapse. You'll learn from each thing. And you can overcome that if you start to take action to build that discipline muscle. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck forever. And we don't want to stay stuck forever. That's not the point of any of this. We want to self-improve. We want to get better every day. And, we have to accept the past as it is and work to make the future better. And I think, so you said that it gives people say that they think they can have permission to stay weak forever. And I don't think that is the mentality to adopt, because would a bodybuilder or a coach tell their client to continue to stay weak? No. So if we think about it like that, you could say, well, what would they tell them to do? Go to the gym, keep getting better every day, and do the best that you can. And that's subjective, of course. That's going to be a lot of variables in that. But as long as you're taking incremental steps every day and self-analyzing and looking at, this, and continuing to improve slowly, you're going to get to your destination. Hey, real quick, if you're struggling with porn or lust, I put together a free 10-minute training that breaks down the yin-yang states that help me stop giving into urges and find peace without white-knuckling it. It's no fluff, just the exact framework that made the biggest difference for me. If that sounds helpful, click the link below. It's 100% free, and if not, enjoy the rest of this episode.
I hear you. That's a really important distinction. You're not saying, stay weak forever. You're saying, it's okay to start weak, but it's not okay to stay there. Almost like, don't shame yourself for being at square one, but also don't confuse acceptance with complacency. And I like the bodybuilding analogy, because no coach is gonna say, yeah, just keep lifting the 5-pound dumbbells for life. They'll say, start there, but next week, we're bumping it up. Let me throw this at you though. In those first 24 to 72 hours, when someone has relapsed and they're staring at themselves in the mirror thinking, I suck, I'll never change, how do they flip that mindset from self-hate to what you're describing, acceptance plus forward motion? Because that seems like the exact tipping point where most people spiral.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I suck, is fine. Not that you'll never change, but looking at that's the wrong direction. You have the right fuel, the wrong direction. You go and you look at yourself in the mirror and you can say to yourself, I suck. And that's just admitting, that's just going towards a deep, dark part of yourself. That's not a fun thing. But sometimes hitting rock bottom is what people need as a spark to push themselves forward. Sometimes you need that change of energy. You can't just keep living in the same cycle over and over again. It's important to be empathetic with yourself, of course, but you can't just always be, oh, it's okay, I did my best. And I know I just said go and do your best, but that's in the present, and that's what I meant by that is saying, okay, in the past, I did my best. I took an incremental step and I actually improved. But if you're not actually doing the thing, if you're not actually trying, and then you can look at yourself and you say, wow, I do suck. And you don't need to beat yourself up. I'm not saying to beat yourself up, but use that anger or that resentment, and don't spiral into beating yourself up. Say, I will not stand for this. I am not going to continue that, because you don't want to have a negative self-image. You don't want to have, I'm not saying to say I suck and put that into your identity. That's not you. That's an action that you took. So maybe don't say I suck. Maybe say I took actions that sucked today. That sounds weird. Say I took actions that did not benefit me today and dragged me down. And the real reason you're feeling that way is because there's a disconnect between who you want to be and who you are. And I think it's important because you have whether you know it or not, you have an image in your head of who you want to be. And that image is not and what you want. And that image is not what's being played out yet, which is what causes all this suffering, because you're not living within harmony of what you know you could have and what you know you could be, or at least the expectations of what you have with yourself. So what's important is to have that positive self-image and say, hey, that's not in alignment with who I actually am. And I know that. And I took the wrong actions today. And use that, and you don't have to lie to yourself and say, it's okay, I'm perfect the way I am. Because you know what? Nobody's perfect the way they are. There's always another room. There's always another layer of improvement. You can be and you can look back and be proud of yourself if you're in the 90% and of your potential. But if you're not there, then you need to look back and say, okay, what can I improve? What can I learn from this? Because if you learn from it, you can take action and improve yourself. And that ties into taking action of, in the moment, what you can do in the first 24 hours and days following. Using that energy is to set up preventative measures and to block yourself, or at least make it more difficult to make it happen again. And if you want to take that action immediately, right when you feel that, not, oh, I'll get to that. No, you want to take that action immediately, or at least as soon as you can, because using that energy is going to actually, using that fuel of I suck and I'm not going to stand for this any longer. You can set up digital blockers, you can set up physical blockers, you can delete files, whatever it is that you need to do in order to slow down or make it more difficult. You want to put as much space and energy and time in the way of the thing that you most do repeat the most, that you want to stop. You want to put energy and time and effort and sacrifice in that. So it's like, it's not even worth it at that point. I'm not going to do that. Literally blocking yourself, barricading yourself from doing that.
Right. And I think that's the piece a lot of people miss, because shame usually just collapses people. They stay stuck in that loop of, I suck, I suck, I suck, and then they end up running back to the very thing they're trying to quit. But what you're laying out is like, no, use that heat as momentum. Don't let it burn you down, let it fuel the next step. So then here's where I want to push you. Say someone hears this and goes, okay, cool, I get it in theory. But when I'm in the middle of that storm, I don't think straight. I can't remember all these reframes. How do they actually grab hold of that spark in the moment, instead of losing it?
Well, first I want to say that what you avoid is often what you will fall back to. And what you avoid is what's going to follow you. So you can't just avoid it and just block it out like it doesn't exist. You have to face it head on, and you have to acknowledge and actively take the intentional steps to change that. The second thing is guilt and shame aren't good tools to use pretty much ever. They're only, not ever, but they're good tools only for a spark, which means you want to use them as a spark only in the very beginning. You can't use them long term. You cannot use them long term. I'm going to tell you right now that it's been tried and tested. That does not work long term. You can look at any kind of addiction and everything. Guilt and shame don't work. So with that out of the way, I will say that So I will say that, okay, you can't remember all of the reframes and in the moment. So it's not about remembering actual specific reframe, and this will take practice and time. And I think that's very important to keep in mind. You just got to drill it into your head. You just got to keep remembering, keep putting the blockers in place, have an alternative, and have different things that you can do that will keep you from going back to that relapse place. Because otherwise, you're just going to continue in a cycle, which is what most people do.
Yeah, I like that, because what you're pointing out is that avoidance alone doesn't cut it. If all you do is shove it down and hope it disappears, it just waits for you in the dark and eventually drags you back. You've got to actually face it, name it, and then redirect it. And I hear you on guilt and shame too. Like, they might give you that short burst of, ugh, I never want to feel this way again, but if you try to build a whole recovery plan on them, they'll crush you. They're accelerants, not fuel. So let me push this. If long-term recovery isn't built on guilt, then what is the better long-term fuel? What do you tell people to run on once that initial spark burns out?
See, that's interesting. And I've been thinking about that a lot recently. And I would say that anger can be used as the spark again. So I think better than guilt and shame, anger is a good spark. Now, you don't want, it needs to be controlled anger. You can't be angry against yourself or other people. You have to be somewhat angry about the situation, and so that you kind of just, you get mad and you say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. Basically, you're not getting mad at anything. It's not a hate. It's not hate-filled anger. What it is it's, God damn it. It's no, but not actually, only if you can have the emotional control to do that. If you don't have the emotional control and you're going to have, if you have, say, anger issues, no judgment, but if you have anger issues, or if you have, you're going to fly off the handle if you delve into that, then that's not for you. You don't have to use that. However, it's an amazing spark, because it will, if you can use that as a small, short burst of energy to push you to start the momentum, then the momentum will carry itself. Well, you'll have to keep pushing the momentum, but you'll start the journey, I don't want to say journey because that's kind of long-winded, but start the actions of pushing yourself away from that relapse. And the other thing, other than anger, that you can use is, well, like I said before, like getting in a flow state. And the highest one that you can use is love. You want to use love of something, of yourself. And, I think love of yourself is one of those things that it's the most hard for people to understand and the most difficult to actually conceptualize, to think about, and to really have a mental image of that. Because what, are you going to hug yourself? It's like, how are you going to have self-love? How is that possible? So I think self-love is really not as much, doesn't feel as strong as maybe love of other things or people. So I understand where people might be coming from, where they don't understand the concept of self-love. Self-love, I would say, is taking care of yourself and taking the actions for yourself. And it's not necessarily, I'd say self-improvement is self-love. It's not necessarily doing something, feeling that same kind of love that you feel for other people and other things. However, that same kind of love for other people and other things, that can be what you hang on to, and that can serve as a ginormous, immense anchor for yourself. Because what you can do is you can tie it to that, where you think about those other people, you think about those other things, and you say to yourself that if I give into this now, how will that be affecting them? And even if that's, maybe you don't have that yet. Say it's kids. Say you want future children, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to, how do I word this? You want to be a more upstanding, let's say, man for them. You want to be someone who is capable of conquering his own demons and not having to put it with the least amount of judgment as possible, dirty little secrets of things that you have to hide, where you have to put on a mask for other people. You want to be your most authentic self for them. Or it could also be a love interest. If you don't have a current love interest in your life, you can have an imaginary one. Now, bear with me. It sounds kooky. I'm not saying be kooky about it. I'm saying that you want to be able to show up for him or her in the future. You want to have that. You want to be able to be that kind of person for them. That you don't have this, because how will that affect them? And if you think about that, and you think, and sometimes doing this, it's not a one-to-one thing. People have success in varying things. But in this community of recovering from porn and any other compulsive sexual behavior, it's often that you are, sorry, I got distracted. It's often that you, in these communities, that these behaviors feel like they push away that kind of thing. That if you are constantly using porn or masturbation, that this is going to push away any potential partners. And so if you think about that, and if you buy into that, I'm not going to comment on one way or another, because it's not necessarily, I think that's a more personal belief, and that's a personal subjective. It differs from person to person. So, but if you feel like that afflicts you, if that affects your life, and that's the case, then you can realize that doing this is going to directly influence your life and push away a potential partner. And so you have to decide which is more important, having this little small relapse of a small few seconds or up to however many minutes of short-term pleasure, or building a long-lasting relationship and a life with someone. And so you have to really put it into perspective. And I'm not trying to build goals for you. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life. So you take what you want out of this. But that is my perspective of that. Those can be useful tools for you. Do you want to have a few seconds of that, or do you have to have something else entirely that is a much higher calling to you? Because to a degree, if you wouldn't want to stop and quit if it wasn't affecting you negatively in some way. I don't think anybody would do it just because, it makes me feel a little bad afterwards. It's got to be actually negatively affecting you in some way. And since that's the case, you can use that. What is it robbing from you? What is it taking away from you? What is it blocking you from getting in your future? So by using that in the moment, you can steer yourself away from a potential relapse. Not saying it's going to be easy. Not saying it's going to be, okay, yeah, no, I dug deep, and I'm not going to, because I value that more. It's still going to suck. It's still going to suck. You're still going to have to feel that discomfort and not want to turn away from it, but know in your heart that is the right move to do, that that's the right choice. And so you can use that, though, because that is the right, that can be a mantra for you too, that's the right choice. So I think also another thing that you could use is, so we're talking about love. If you're religious, I'm not pushing any religion or any kind of thing like that, but if you're religious, you can use the love of God or the universe or any kind of thing like that too. I just wanted to mention that quickly, just because some people, and I feel like a lot of people, could get use from that you can further, you don't want to disappoint or do that to God or the universe. So I think, yeah, That's my point. That's what I think. Hey, just real quick. A lot of guys watching this are fighting their urges in silence, thinking they just need more willpower. But that couldn't be further from the truth. And that's exactly why I created this free training. It walks you through the exact emotional shifts that help me stop chasing urges and start rewiring. If porno lust is a part of your struggle, I think it'll really help. Links below.
That's really well said, and I like how you broke it into tiers of fuel. Guilt and shame are like wet matches. They'll spark for a second, but they burn out quick and leave you in the dark. Anger, when it's clean and controlled, can be like a blowtorch, just enough to get the engine started. But love, man, love is the thing that actually sustains. And you're right, it doesn't have to be this fuzzy Hallmark version of self-love. Sometimes it's just basic self-respect, taking care of yourself so you can show up real for the people you care about, or even for the future version of yourself. Like you said, if you want kids someday, or you want a partner, or you just don't want to live behind a mask, that's a powerful motivator. So let me toss this back to you. For somebody who's just starting out on day 0 and feels like they don't have that anchor yet, no partner, no kids, shaky sense of self, where do you tell them to begin finding that bigger why that can carry them past those first few shaky days?
It's a good question. Yeah. So I think that I don't know if I believe in, so it's really weird because I don't know if I believe in a sense of a why, just because like that's why you're doing something. I'm doing that, because I want. It frames it, when you think of it as a why, it frames it in a kind of shallow way. So if your goal was that you wanted a girlfriend or a partner or whomever, then it frames it in a shallow way of that's why you're doing it. But when you think about it, when you put it in a different perspective of it, which are you going to choose, that's a much more compelling ideology a mentality, because it makes it more real. Like, oh, I want a girlfriend. And it's easy to say. You can just say that. But it doesn't give you that sense of feeling of actually having to face, I'm choosing this or I'm choosing this. And that's the case. That's the truth. And I think but I get what you're saying, that you need some sort of reason. And I think that, so where do you start? If you're starting with basically nothing, shaky sense of self, I think you need to look at the people that you most admire and decide or figure out what traits you most admire about them, and realize that you can have that, you can do those things, you can be that person, and there's nothing stopping you from that except time, effort, and putting in the work. And that everybody has things that they want. Now, there might be a lot of things that you want. You have to decide what you want most. What is the thing that calls to you most? What are the things that you want in your life? The things that you feel like you're kind of empty without. And I think the more you achieve these things, the less you feel empty about the smaller things. The more you get exactly what made you feel empty, the less there are things that make you feel empty, if that makes sense. If you have the things that fill you up, you're not going to feel as empty. But there's going to be that small aching for wanting something that you can still keep following that until you keep improving and improving and improving and keep getting those things and things and things. And I don't think the victim mindset helps anybody. So that might be something to also work on. But that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother topic. I do think, though, that you can start at being grateful of what you can have today. You can breathe. You have 2 arms and 2 legs. You are, now obviously I'm assuming, but if you have these things, you can be grateful for them, and you can take in the beauty of life, and you can smell the flowers, and you're still alive, and you have air in your lungs, and anything that you can be grateful for. I can't tell you what you can be grateful for, because it's not my life, it's your life.
I like the take. You're basically saying, instead of chasing a why, like a slogan, make it a choice. Like, right here, right now. Are you choosing this short, shallow hit, or are you choosing the life and the traits of the person you actually admire and want to become? That feels way heavier, way more real, than just, oh, my Y is X. And I love that you tied it to gratitude too, because that's such a grounding starting point. If you've got nothing else, no partner, no kids, shaky sense of self, you can still start with, I'm breathing, I'm alive, I get another shot at this.
Exactly.
That's enough to plant a seed. But let me press you a bit. When somebody doesn't feel grateful, when they wake up and they're like, man, I don't care about flowers or lungs or anything, I just feel empty. How do they break through that numbness to actually access gratitude in the first place?
Just want to say, okay, I know that's a very serious topic right there, but man, waking up and saying, man, I don't care about flowers or lungs or anything, that's pretty fucking funny. Okay, so yeah, if you wake up and you feel completely empty, I think that's one of the most biggest disadvantages that you can have. And, you know, I empathize with you. That's a really tough feeling. I think that building something in your life, whatever it may be, starting somewhere is going to start generating those, first of all, the physical things and the intangible things of feelings of gratitude. And you have to start somewhere in order to have something. You have to start, if your canvas is empty, you have to start painting somewhere. Even if it doesn't turn out exactly the way you want it, you can still get that ball rolling and get that painting started. And maybe you'll switch what you're doing, and that's fine. That's completely. Maybe you started painting a landscape, and you switch it to a tiger. Fine, cool. That's totally fine. You can do that. There's nothing saying that you can't. So if you wake up completely empty, though, I think one of the greatest things that you can work on is your body, is by going to the gym and getting physiologically in shape, because that will spark your mind, that will make your mind work more efficiently, and that will give you a sense of accomplishment. You know, you show up and you did that. And, you know, if you wake up completely feeling empty, I don't know. I do know, but I don't know. You know what I mean? Then, because I feel like most people have been there to a degree. And if you don't have really anything to go off of, then you're going to feel empty. You're going to feel numb. Well, why wouldn't you? You're living a empty, numb life at that point. And say, okay, well, then say you're that empty that you don't care about that relapsing. Well, it's not. If you don't care about it, you're not going to recover. You're just not. And that's just the fact of the matter. You can't just take a magic pill and stop. That's not how it works. So I think you have to start somewhere, and you have to build, even if you don't feel like it. And I think self-improvement of all realms is a great beginning, and especially in some sense of physicality. Being able to go to the gym and be active and get your heart going in some way, and continuing, because that's an easy thing to do and build up and keep doing.
Love that. Straight fire. Short version, you nailed it. If someone's waking up numb and empty, grand speeches about meaning won't move them. The body will. Start with something tiny and physical. 5 minutes of movement, a walk, 1 set of push-ups, a cold splash. That motion rewires the brain enough to feel something,
Body
even a
feels the
little,
mind,
and that
mind
little
feels
feeling
the
compounds into
spirit.
momentum. Don't wait for motivation or a grand
It's a cycle.
why. Build a chain of tiny wins, protected with blockers and simple rules, and let those wins create the taste for more. And use guilt only as a spark. Anger, controlled, or love, protecting your future life, are far better long-term fuels. Bottom line, start small, show up, repeat. Momentum will do the heavy lifting.
I think you also have to do the heavy lifting, but momentum makes it easier, and that's why habits are so important.
Exactly, and that's the heartbeat of day zero, right? Don't overcomplicate it. Don't try to figure your whole life out in the first 72 hours. Just start somewhere real, small, and physical. Use the spark, whatever it is, guilt, anger, love, and channel it into that first brick you can lay down. Because once you've laid that first brick, the wall builds itself one piece at a time.
I think it's also important to remember that you're not going to be taking everything. You're not going to, when you're in the midst of it, don't think of how long it'll be. Just get through the day. Say to yourself, I just need to get through the end of today, and take it day by day, because urges and temptations and all of that can only exist in the present moment. So you have to take it one temptation at a time, one urge at a time, one day at a time. And that's just how it is. And if you fortify your mind in a way to not take it, and you have to always do it for I know that sounds so weird, but that you aren't fighting it in the future, because a lot of times we'll unconsciously do that. Like, so I have to do this for so long, and it's like if I said, oh, just do that for the rest of your life. You're going to feel overwhelmed. That's just what's going to happen. You're going to feel this dread, the sense of dread, because that's so much. But when you think about it, okay, I just need to get through this one. No, just this one. No. And what'll happen is just the pure repeated effort of doing that day in, day out, of continually saying no to the temptation, to the whatever it may be, you will continue to build that resistance against it and be able to have the discipline slowly and surely.
Yes, that's so good. Because the second you start projecting into the future, oh man, I can't do this for the rest of my life, your brain just caves under the weight of it. But if you shrink it down to, I just need to win this one urge, this 1 hour, this one day, suddenly it's doable. And I like how you said urges only live in the present. That's true, they don't exist tomorrow, they don't exist next year. They're just right here, right now, which means all you really ever have to fight is the urge in front of you. One no at a time. But let me ask you, because I know people listening are thinking this, what about when you do think too far ahead? Like, the thought sneaks in, oh my god, I'll never make it a week, let alone a lifetime. How do you stop that spiral before it crushes you?
I think if you are thinking that, you just have to ground yourself back to reality. I mean, I know that's a simple, easy answer, but that's just the truth. And that's easier said than done, for sure. I think that, you gotta not think like that. Just say, take a deep breath, say, no, I'm going to focus just on this one, and I want to be free from this. Because if you truly think about it in the other direction, if you truly, instead of thinking like, oh, I have to do this forever, again, it gets easier. Remember that too, that the first 2 weeks are difficult. I would say the first few days are probably the most difficult. The first 2 weeks are the second difficult, and it slowly just in chunks gets easier and easier. And you get a few random spikes that might imitate the first few days here and there until 90 days, where I don't think that after 90 days, you're completely 100% off the hook. That's going to be still in your brain to some degree, but don't let that scare you. I'm not saying that to let you scare you. To scare you. I'm saying that because it's there, that it's going to be a whisper at that point, rather than it's going to be a very, very faint whisper at that point. It's going to be a very faint whisper, and you need to be aware of that. But it's not going to be something, it's going to be like a fly, and you just swat it away and you're fine, whatever. Or maybe you need to put on bug spray, whatever that means in the real world, in the translation of a metaphor. So I think that you need to ground yourself, and that's one of the main important reasons to meditate, and ideally daily, because meditation not only is so many benefits for you, you'll just feel better already from meditation, even just 10 minutes a day. But meditation, what it does is it teaches you how to ground yourself from those crazy thoughts and feelings that are where it runs away from you, feelings and thoughts that you don't necessarily desire. And you can detach yourself from them and say, oh, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings. And you can get away from those and put that into practice, where, okay, you're thinking about all these thoughts, I'm going to have to do this forever. As you meditate, I think it changes your brain in a way that it makes your mind less likely to do that in the first place. It fortifies your mind to stay more present. And that is so important. So that's what I would say is meditation not letting your thoughts get away from you. And yeah.
For someone in those first 72 hours who's never meditated before, what's the simplest way to start? Like, what's the bare minimum practice you'd hand them so they don't overcomplicate it?
Hands down, guided meditation. If you've never meditated before, you should definitely do a guided meditation, because it gives your brain something to latch onto. It's almost like watching a video like you're watching right now, or listening to right now, either or. And it gives you something to latch onto where it occupies your brain and you can stay connected. And, they give you silent gaps in between to kind of breathe and rest and whatever. But find a guided meditation that you like and continue to do it. Either find several different ones every day. Probably use the same one every day and just use it for a month if you like it enough. Then after that, slowly maybe do every other day or something like that, or maybe find a new one, or just taper yourself off. I mean, you don't even need to taper yourself off, really. If it helps you, it helps you. I just think that the purest form of meditation would be, and I'm not saying that I'm the arbiter of truth. I'm saying, well, maybe I am, but I'm saying that you don't need to, I'm not saying that there's any correct way to meditate versus not. Obviously, there is certain ways to meditate and not. But what I'm saying is, if it works for you, it works for you. I feel like meditating by yourself teaches you more how to deal with those thoughts by yourself on your own than a guided meditation, because there's not always going to be someone there holding your hand. It's like if you start working somewhere, you need someone to show you the ropes. You need someone to show you how everything works. But you have to, at some point, remove those training wheels. I think it's exactly like biking. You need to have the training wheels to learn how to bike at first. Maybe you don't need to, but just like meditation, you don't need to watch guided meditation, but they help you learn how to bike at first. And then you take them off, and then you can do it on your own. And that's going to help you to ground yourself when it matters most.
Yeah, that's spot on. The training wheels analogy is perfect. A guided meditation kind of holds your hand and keeps your brain from wandering all over the place, especially when you're brand new. But eventually, you do want to learn how to sit with your thoughts solo, because in real life, no one's going to be in your ear coaching you when that urge hits at 2 a.m. And I like how you framed it as practice, not perfection. Like, you don't need to sit cross-legged for an hour chanting. Even 5 or 10 minutes with a guided track can start rewiring your brain to notice thoughts without getting lost in them. That's a game changer for those first few days. So here's what I'm curious about. When someone finally manages to sit through that first urge without caving, maybe they breathe, maybe they meditate, maybe they just outwait it. What's the best way for them to lock in that win so their brain actually remembers it for next time?
So I think identifying the trigger for sure, exactly what caused you to start going back to it, what caused you to do that, what is the thing that is drawing you back in, and thinking about ways that you can block yourself from that. Again, going back to the barricades and the blockers, you want to think about ways that you can stop yourself from going back to that, because then what you can do is take those actions and make it more difficult for you to even consider that.
Exactly. Because if you just ride the urge out but don't figure out what lit the fire in the first place, you're basically leaving the door unlocked for the next round. Identifying that trigger is like detective work. You trace it back. Was it boredom, loneliness, stress, scrolling at midnight? And once you know, you can build the barricade exactly where the crack is. I think that's the underrated win on day 0. Yeah, you resisted once, but the bigger victory is when you turn that moment into data. So you're not just surviving urges, you're learning from them. Here's my pushback though. What if someone says, man, my trigger is literally everything: stress, boredom, being alone, even being happy? How do you help them narrow it down without feeling like they're fighting the entire world?
So when I say trigger, I don't necessarily mean a feeling trigger. It can be for sure. And I feel like you've got to realize what it is in that moment. And if it is everything, that just means you have a lot of branches on your tree that need to be trimmed. You have a lot of different things that you need to work on, maybe work on. You have a lot of different things that you need to address, and that sounds like a lot of work. But what I'm saying is, for each thing, you need to have a different alternative, and you need to have a different thing that you can do and different way to get that in order. Because, I mean, a lot of it is, I don't think that you can just sit around and play video games and eat Cheetos all day and you're going to be able to recover. I think you need to be actively working on yourself. You don't need to be perfect. I'm not saying you need to be perfect. But what I am saying is that you need to have a self-improvement philosophy for life and a mindset around surrounding life. So you need to be able to pick yourself up and realize, okay, so it's stress, it's boredom, it's loneliness, it's all of these things. You need to have a healthy way of fulfilling each. Like, you need to have in day-to-day life, you need to be working on obtaining those things to some degree. And you don't need to be at it full throttle. You don't need to achieve it full force at once. Even small steps, it's going to help you slowly start feeling better, and it's slowly going to have you reduce the feeling triggers that come up. So let's say that you never went outside and you stayed inside all day. Now, what you could do is simply go to a store and be around other people. And again, I'm not trying to judge people here. I'm just saying that is a possibility. There's people that don't go out and they are going to feel loneliness. But if even just seeing other people's faces, the profound effects on that is going to be insane. It's going to give you a little boost. Even just saying hello, thank you, whatever. It's going to give you that sense of human interaction. I feel like we as humans also need strangers to walk around. I know that sounds so strange, but strangers. But I think that's important for us to interact with other people and meet new people, even if it's just a hello, and both for strangers and for friends and family. I don't think we're conditioned not to. I think we are conditioned to be around others. We need other people. So that's going on a loneliness whole thing, but that gives a good example of what you need to do depending on each individual thing. You need to identify, okay, it was loneliness, okay. And then you also want to identify like the actual, was it just the feeling or did something pop up? Were you on Instagram and, oh shit, you saw something that triggered your reaction to that? You might want to get off Instagram. You might want to stop scrolling because that's going to feed what you are trying to get rid of.
Yeah, I love how you put that. Like a tree with a bunch of branches that need trimming. It's not that everything is the enemy, it's that each trigger is just another branch you've got to address with its own tool. Stress, maybe you deal with that through exercise or journaling. Loneliness, maybe it's as simple as stepping outside, saying hi to a cashier, or texting a friend. Boredom, that's where hobbies, projects, or learning something new come in. And you're right, this isn't about being perfect overnight. It's about slowly stacking those little changes until life feels less empty, and the urges lose their power. Even something as tiny as swapping a late-night Instagram scroll for a walk around the block changes the equation.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. For someone who's on day 0, maybe still shaky and overwhelmed, what's the first branch they should cut? Like, if they had to pick just one trigger to tackle right away, which one gives them the biggest bang for their buck?
I think things that are directly influencing your hormones and you know what I mean, in some way or another are amping you up towards something sexual and something that is going to bring you back to relapse directly. Anything like that, Instagram, whatever it is that everybody's different. Everybody has their own things. Everybody has whatever. Whatever it is that's drawing you back in, I think putting a massive blocker in front of that and getting off of that immediately. Now, that's assuming that you already did that. After that, I would say definitely loneliness. I think loneliness is one of the biggest culprits of that. Boredom, for sure. You need to make sure your time's filled up and you need to have scheduled times. And that's why it's so important to have a mission, because if you don't have a mission, you're not going to be like starving to dedicate your entire time towards something. And you're not going to have basically an overflowing life of things that you need to do. Now, I'm not saying to overschedule yourself, but you do want to generally have a filled schedule of I need to do this thing, and without being too overly stressed and without enough error tolerance of that, without enough space between activities because things take different times every day. It's not a perfect fit in a box thing. So definitely loneliness is number one outside of actual things that directly bring you back to relapse. Going on your phone late at night, that's another one. Especially things late at night, your brain's already done for the day. You're not functioning most optimally. So you want to be sure to, it's easy to be lonely at night too. So you want to be aware of that, and you want to not do that.
Yeah, that's huge, because if you think about it, those direct hormone triggers are like leaving the door wide open. You can have all the discipline in the world, but if you're doom scrolling Instagram at 1 a.m., your brain's just not built to win that fight. Closing those doors first, that's like the immediate, stop the bleeding step. And I agree with you on loneliness. That's such a sneaky one, because people think it's just about sex drive, but half the time it's actually the deeper ache of, I don't feel connected. And late at night, when you're tired and your guard's down, that ache gets loud. If you don't have people, purpose, or at least structure filling that space, it's way too easy to fall back into the old loop. So let me press you here. If loneliness is the number one culprit, what's a super practical move someone on day 0 can do tonight to ease that loneliness, even if they don't have close friends or a big support system?
I think video games exist with a voice chat for a reason. I think that there are lots of people willing to be friendly and wanting to be friendly and wanting to connect just like you. And there are plenty of games that you can either use voice or text chat. And obviously be careful, do your due diligence or whatever. But you want to do that. You want to have some sort of connection like that. Hey, before you go, you made it this far, which means you're a part of the 1% that actually want to improve. So here's a free gift for you in case you want to break free from porn or lust. It's a 10-minute yin-yang training. It's straight to the point. It shows you how I actually overcame the urge loop without only relying on discipline. It's 100% free, and it's the first link in the description. I highly recommend starting there today if that's something that you'd like to stop.